Welcome back to Lecture 9, Vision Part 1. We're going to move now into 9b, the internal eye. So when we look at the eyeball, there are three layers. That outer white tough covering we learned about before, which is the sclera. Then the middle layer, let me grab a pen here. The middle layer is the choroid. So you can see this kind of middle layer right here where they've broken it out for you. The choroid is important in a couple of ways. One is it's where we're going to find blood vessels that supply the tissues of the eyeball. The other is that it has pigment in it. And that becomes really important because as light rays enter the eye, some of them kind of reflect off and bounce around the structures inside the eye. And so what the choroid do is it helps absorb these extraneous light rays that are bouncing around so that you have less glare and so that things don't look so bright. So what's interesting is that the choroid, that middle layer, is what continues into the iris. So by looking at someone's iris, you can tell how deeply or not pigmented their choroid is going to be. And in fact, people who have green or blue eyes don't have a lot of pigment in their iris, which is why it is the color that it is. And so they also don't have a lot of pigment in their choroid, which means they are not particularly well suited for bright, sunny locations because all those light rays are bouncing around more inside their eyeballs, and it's harder for them to tolerate bright light. The retina is the innermost layer. So that's the innermost layer here. They're kind of showing the backside of it looks yellow. We're seeing kind of the whole thing here. Is the inside lining of the eyeball. And that's where we're going to find the photoreceptors, which are the receptors, the sensory nerve endings that can respond to light. So there are different chambers in the eye, each one filled with humors or different types of substances. So I would like you to know that between the cornea and the iris right here, there is a space called the anterior chamber, and it is filled with something called the aqueous humor, which is a watery substance. So you don't really think about it, but yeah, there's a watery substance there. And then the large part of the eyeball here, this biggest part of the eyeball, is called the vitreous chamber, and it is filled with what is called vitreous humor. Vitreous as a word comes from the word for glass. Glass, when it's molten, is more really what they meant because it's clear, you can see through it, but it's a gel-like substance. And so we have this kind of gooey gel taking up the majority of the eyeball, but it's clear, so light rays can come through it. But that gel helps to keep the shape of the eyeball, and it also helps to keep that retina, that inner lining, nice and smooth and flat against the surface of the eyeball and help prevent kind of wrinkles in the retina. So the vitreous humor is what is causing the problem if you ever have floaters. So floaters are these little kind of shadows or little shapes that can kind of float across your vision, hence the name. And here's a depiction of what it might look like. And these are most commonly caused by little clumps of proteins called collagen that can form in the vitreous humor just as we age, right? And so, as they kind of drift around through the goo, sometimes they're blocking light rays from reaching your retina, and so you can see these floaters. They are harmless. However, if you all of a sudden develop a bunch of them out of nowhere, or if at any time you start seeing flashes of light in your vision or vision loss, please go to the eye doctor immediately because it could actually be a problem with your retina. But most of the time, floaters are you just have a few of them, intermittent, random, here and there. They're harmless. So we're going to talk about the iris again, right? So the iris can change the diameter of its opening, right? Make the pupil larger or smaller because you have some muscles in the iris, one of which is the pupillary constrictor muscle. I'll bet you can guess what it does. And so in response to bright light conditions, the pupil will constrict because that muscle in the iris is going to contract via cranial nerve number 3, the oculomotor nerve, the workhorse of the eye. So let's talk about the lens. So the light rays are coming into the eye right? They're coming in. That one's not coming in because the pupil is constricted. Okay, so light rays are coming in from all over in our environment. And then the lens is a lens. It's going to focus them so that they hit precisely on the retina. Now, most of the time when we're looking at things that are far away, those light rays are coming in pretty parallel to each other. But when we're looking at something that's really close up, the light rays are kind of coming in from lots of different angles. And so what's going to happen is that we have this ciliary body here, which are these muscles to the side. They're behind the pupil. They're posterior to the pupil. So we have these ciliary body muscles, and they pull on these little suspensory ligaments that you can see here, one on each side. So the lens itself is this round, clear lens made of some proteins. And so when you pull on the strings, it's going to flatten out. And when you let go, it's going to round up, right? So you can have different shapes of the lens in order to focus the light rays exactly where you need it to. So why is that important? Oh, this is a picture, sorry, of focusing, of how the lens focuses those light rays precisely onto the back of your eyeball, onto the retina, so that the photoreceptors get a nice clear image. You may notice in that picture that the stop sign is upside down and backwards. That's just what happens when you have a convex lens. So you're seeing an image here of somebody having a convex lens, which means it's rounded outward as opposed to concave, where it's rounded inward. And you can see that it flips everything upside down and backwards. But of course, that's okay. Our brain doesn't care. It'll just flip things the right side up. Not an issue. So when we think about the lens, there are a couple of clinical things that people can manifest due to issues. One is eye strain. So there are lots of different potential causes of eye strain, but one is if you're doing lots of close work. So you're spending lots of time looking at things that are very close to you. That requires those ciliary body muscles to be very active so that the lens can round up and shape the way it needs to. And so it can, cause some eye strain after a while. So the recommendation is to periodically take some breaks and rest that part of your eye by looking at something in the distance for about 30 seconds every 20 minutes or so, right? Or every 15 minutes or so. Take a little break, look off into the distance, rest that part of your eyes. The lens is also interesting because as we age, it becomes less elastic. So when it kind of humps up, that's because it's elastic, whoop. And as we age, it becomes less elastic, less able to become more rounded. And so we can't focus on things that are very close. So that's why you might see somebody, with their menu, or you give them something to read and they hold it very far away to try to see it, or they get out their reading glasses because the reading glasses will help focus the light rays for you. So we're briefly going to talk about the retina. So this is the innermost layer of the eyeball, covers the whole inside of the eyeball and contains the photoreceptors. So those are the cells that are going to detect the presence of light. And light rays have to focus on the retina. So if there's a problem with focusing them in the exact right location, so if we accidentally focus them in front of the retina or behind the retina, if we don't get that quite right, then we're not going to be able to see clearly. So when you measure visual acuity in class, really, your visual acuity is the ability of your eye to focus those light rays precisely on the retina. The most common visual acuity deficit that we see in young people is myopia or nearsightedness. It's called nearsightedness because you can see things that are close, but you can't see things that are far away. So in myopia or nearsightedness, what happens is when something is far away, it is too difficult for for whatever reason, your eye ends up focusing the light rays in front of the retina instead of on the retina. So oftentimes this is just caused by the fact that you have a long eyeball, that your retina is farther away than it should be. Usually it is not a problem with the lens. Usually it just has to do with the size of the length, the depth of your eyeball. And so the image then ends up fuzzy because now the light rays have kind of diverged a little bit by the time they get to the retina. So this is just another picture. I don't super love this picture because he's looking at a strawberry, which is usually something that's going to be pretty close to you. But let's say it's a strawberry far across the field, right? So again, that image is being focused in front of the retina instead of behind. So either your eyeball is too long, it's too deep, or sometimes the lens is too curved. You just have a really rounded lens. So how do we correct this? So we're going to use lenses to diverge those light rays a little bit so that then your eyeball will end up focusing them exactly on the retina. So that's what glasses do. That is also what contacts do. They just do it right from on the surface of your cornea. And that's also what LASIK surgery does. So in LASIK surgery, they actually are using lasers to reshape your cornea to turn it into more of a lens. So kind of like turning your cornea into a built-in contact lens for you. Pretty cool. All right, so in summary, for the internal eye, we've got those 3 layers of the eyeball, the outer sclera, middle choroid that has pigment and blood vessels in it, and then the inner retina, which has your photoreceptors, that anterior chamber with aqueous humor right behind your, what you put contact lenses on. All right, I'm having a brain fart right now. And then the vitreous chamber behind, which is filled with that gel and can cause floaters. Remember the iris and the pupil and the light constriction reflex. Thank you, cranial nerve number 3, oculomotor, and the lens and the ciliary body, which is going to become active when we need to round up the lens for close vision, which can lead to eye strain. And then as we get older, we lose the ability to do that. And so we need to use reading glasses. And then the importance of the retina in terms of focusing the light rays exactly on there. And if we don't, we have a loss in visual acuity. Myopia or nearsightedness is where those light rays get focused in front of the retina. So we're going to use some type of lenses, glasses, contacts, or cornea, that's the word, contacts on your cornea, or reshaping your cornea with LASIK to get the light rays to focus where they should. All right, in the third part of this lecture, we're going to do an introduction to the retina and photoreceptors. See you then.